Thank you very much. All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm James Orr. Class. Well, thank you all who actually planned a little bit ahead of time and were able to navigate the road closures. Appreciate you all being here. I suspect we're going to have a couple late people because we had I think 40-something people RSVP tonight, and I think we don't have enough seats for everybody. So maybe some people will get discouraged and not come. Intro to Financial Independence, retiring early. That's what we're doing now. So upcoming classes, while we'll do this stuff while we're waiting for last-minute stragglers to come on in. So the classes coming up. Oh, hello. Last classes. Today is Intro to Fire. And I am sure that there's going to be plenty of other opportunities in the presentation tonight. I was pausing.
Thank you to everyone.
Because Brian was sleeping. He was like, what's going on here? James is like, pause. He's like, why is James stopped? What just happened there? Okay. So upcoming classes. So Brian has the rest of the year off. I am teaching next week, the week after, and then the week after. There's the holiday party. Then there's no classes 2 weeks in a row. And then the class after that is market stats for 2018. So I'm teaching basically the next 4 classes. So take that as you will. So next week, I started working on this presentation today. What should I do with $1 million? The premise of this class is you wake up one day and realize you've saved $1 million, or you inherit $1 million, or you win a lottery or something like that, and you come out of it with $1 million. What should you do with it? And I will walk you through, 10 different scenarios or so, going over different investing strategies and what each one looks like, how much money you can actually expect to live on without depleting your funds, and investing in real estate, investing in stocks. I'll go through a whole bunch of different stuff. It's going to be pretty amazing. I started working on it today. The challenge with that class is honestly going to be, how do I take an 8-hour class and teach it in 2 hours? Because there's so much stuff I want to cover in it that I may have to do multiple steps. Brian, where's the microphone, Royce?
Don't teach the last 6 hours.
Don't teach the last 6 hours? Just start with the first 2? Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, that's what that class is going to be. What to do with $1 million. Really, really good class. I just started working on it today. And then after that, the impact of cash-on-cash return on investment with FIRE and real estate. Yeah, FIRE. So basically, if you think about, we're going to cover some stuff tonight, like safe withdrawal rates. If you think about real estate's version of a safe withdrawal rate, it's really cash-on-cash return. And so I'm going to go over a lot of what cash-on-cash return means, how I think of it as a safe withdrawal rate, and how it actually is better than a safe withdrawal rate, and some other things related to that. So it's going to be really amazing. There's going to be, this is another class that's probably going to be 8 hours long, but I'll figure out just to teach 2 hours of it. But it's going to be really, really good. I haven't started working on that one, but that's going to be coming up on December 12th. Then after that, how many people came to the holiday party last year? Raise your hands high. Okay, if you came to the holiday party last year, you probably got this as a gift, correct? Okay, so this was my gift to everyone last year. It's like 440 pages of checklists on how to do the real estate investing strategy, how to do Nomad. It is a out-of-print book. This is the last known copy, so it's not available anymore. It was like a special gift. The book, the gift for this year, I have 49 copies left, and it's this book. It's a brand new book I just wrote. We just got it hot off the presses. So if you come to the Christmas party, Wednesday, December 19th, and you're one of the first 49 people to come, you will get a free copy of the book. So this book is basically acquiring a portfolio of cash flowing properties in northern Colorado, a real estate financial planner blueprint. It is like a whole bunch of charts and analysis on buying investment properties and how to do it and what the numbers look like. So come to the holiday party and get a copy. First 49 people to come will get copies. Yeah, Royce.
Available on Amazon?
It is available on Amazon, but I would not buy it. Come to the party. No, I think it's actually reasonably priced this time. Because other books, I make them really, really high priced so that you don't buy them. Clients, I have a couple copies of the 2018 version. Clients that have met with me to kind of buy or sell a house, if you need a copy of this, I'm going to go through the 2018 copies, and then I'm going to start on 2019. So if you haven't met with me and you want to do so, there's probably a couple copies of this left. Any new people that have never been to NCREG before, raise your hand. Yeah, Brian, very funny. So if you fill out one of the forms, the intro forms, before Tammy runs out, you'll get a copy of the Nomad book. And this is basically the 5 different strategies on how to do Nomad, which is one of the 2 best strategies in our marketplace right now. Okay, that's all the housekeeping stuff related to the holiday party. No class on Christmas, a day after Christmas, whatever that is, and then no class on January 2nd. Any questions on the schedule?
Where is the holiday party?
The holiday party is where, Brian?
Bad Daddy's, assuming that's been, I mean, it's confirmed from my side, talking to the manager.
Okay.
Holly just needs to call again. Now that it's
Tammy's gonna send an email.
But yeah, it should be at Bad Daddy's. It should be the entire upstairs area. So if it's super nice, we'll have the doors open.
Yeah, don't rely on the information you get here. Definitely look on the Meetup because we will update that and make sure. If you're not getting the emails from Meetup, definitely you want to RSVP on there to do it. So, all right. Any final questions on schedule? Sweet. So introductions. Who are you and when do you plan to retire and what does that look like for you? So if you want to go around the room, try to keep it less than 3 minutes per person because we've got a lot to cover. I got like 70 slides tonight, so. Yes, sir.
Hi.
Yeah, it doesn't the microphone does not amplify your voice. It only records for the podcast.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lori. I've been, I think, to 1 or 2 meetings before, and I live in California, and so whenever I'm in town, I like to come here.
Oh, awesome. Thanks.
And my father and I do work on real estate investing, so.
Awesome. Very cool. Thanks. Welcome.
My name is Mary, and I'm hoping to retire within the next 2 years.
Nice.
So that's why this class is really important to me, and what it looks like, I have really not a good idea.
Okay.
My name's Bob, and I retired 16 months ago, and it looks great.
Nice. Why are you here then? Yeah.
He wants to be a loan partner.
Yes, he does want to be a loan partner. Hey, by the way, how many people came to the partnership class 2 weeks ago? Was that awesome or what?
Yes.
I told Brian after we left, we went out to eat afterwards, and I told him, I said, I think that was actually the best class of 2018. And Brian was like, thought I was trolling him or something like that. He's like, really? Why'd you think it was the best class? I thought it was awesome. So I thought that he really did a good job and put that together, and it was really, really good. Do you guys agree, the people who came? Yeah, so if we did that again, you guys should come, right? You guys would come again if you already been there? And would you recommend everyone else attend? Yep. Okay, that's the only class I would ever do that for, but I think that it's worthwhile. So, because we don't record it either. It's like a be in person, negotiate stuff type of class. The podcast doesn't mean anything. We didn't even record it at all. You had to come. So, awesome. Thanks, Barbie. Go ahead.
My name's Barbie, and I retired 2 weeks ago.
Wow! It's crazy.
After the partnership class, you did so much. That's a new one.
Done.
Now we the Teacher of the Year award's going to.
That's right. That's right. It's going to Brian as I finish out the year with 5 classes in a row.
I'm Austin. For me, I'm hoping in 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
And for me, that looks a mixture of real estate investing and self-employment.
Okay,
That's
awesome.
where I headed.
Very cool.
Hi, I'm Michelle. Same as him, I guess. I would love to retire by age 40. I think that's my goal.
Awesome. Thanks.
And just continue to do side hustles and that kind of thing, but have the passive income allow, cover all our living expenses and that kind of thing.
Very cool. Thanks. Welcome.
I'm Mike, Nomad Investor. What am I looking for is actually to not necessarily retire for about 10 years or so because I enjoy the work that I do, but I definitely want to retire financially independent.
Awesome. Very cool. How come you don't have a green name tag if you're a nomad? You forgot to ask people if they're nomads? Wow.
Hi, I'm Donna, and I'm a workaholic, so I don't know when I'll retire. But as soon as James gets me a couple more houses, I'll at least be comfortable retiring.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Dan. I'm a buy and hold investor, and our outlook is probably 2 or 3 years.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Sandy. 10 to 15 years, and I really don't know what that will look like.
Okay.
Haven't
Awesome.
thought that far.
Thanks.
I'm Luca, and I'm not sure when I'm going to retire, maybe never.
Okay. You guys are married? So this is a surprise to you, the 15-year kind of plan? Like you didn't know? That's awesome. That's right. You're like, well, I better start working there. Yeah.
My name's Caroline. I would like a few more buy and holds to support my tropical lifestyle in 10 years.
Okay. Awesome. Where's Doug? Where's his island? Right? Didn't Doug want a whole island as his retirement?
That's why you don't see him.
That's right. He has his island. We assume that Doug has his island.
2018 is the year of the island.
My name's Jim, and I don't see retirement in the cards for me. I would like to retire from my day job, but retire to full-time investing.
Awesome.
And I'm looking at maybe 3 years.
Awesome. And Jim's one of my partners. We actually partnered on a deal last at the partnership class. Put one together. He was really happy.
He's not so happy.
No, he's really happy. All my partners are super happy. They got exactly what they wanted.
2 weeks for him to be unhappy.
No. He loves it. He was really happy with that.
I'm Jason, nomad, complete opposite of a workaholic. I am the laziest person on the face of the earth. And according to the scenarios that I've ran on the Real Estate Financial Planner, I'm done in 26 months.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allison, and I plan to retire in 5 to 10 years.
Woo!
How y'all doing? It's nice to meet everybody. My name is Joshua Green. I just moved from South Carolina. Did a 4-year stint in the Marine Corps. I'm out here doing an investment broker now, so I can love to find you some properties. I plan to retire probably in like 15 years and then start doing what I'm really passionate about, and that's being a motivational speaker on nutrition and fitness, because I think that our country definitely needs that right now. So.
Awesome. You want to pass it this way? We missed, yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Eli Kalin. I'm actually building a model to do fast flow investments in the Southeast and the Midwest. I guess, let's see.
So the question is, when do you plan to retire? What does that look like for you?
I would say it's more about financial independence.
Okay.
So that I can step back and enjoy the moments.
Okay, awesome.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Grace. I resonate with the workaholic comment, so I haven't put much thought into it.
Awesome.
I'm Al. I'm kind of the same. I don't really have a plan to retire, but what it would look like for me is I could if I wanted to. You know, the bills are done, everything's done, but.
You say you could if you wanted to now, or you
No,
want to get
what
to the
it
point
does
where
look like for me is I could stop work or whatever whenever I wanted to and not worry at all. But
awesome.
I'm not sure how that looks like.
It's part of what tonight's about.
I'm Laura. I don't really plan to retire, just keep kind of changing direction. I would love to have a bunch of cabins to rent out in the mountains. We live in one, and yeah, I like
Nice.
that. And I've been in real estate about 14 years, and I just started doing property management. So if anybody needs anybody, I'm ready.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you. Welcome. Hey, Kevin, I think we missed you.
I'm Kevin. I guess I would like to retire from my day job probably at like 50. I don't know, I kind of enjoy it, so who knows. But then that would look like, for me, I'd love to retire to real estate, bunch of side hustles, that sort of thing.
All right, awesome. Do you have our lawn chair? I think Tammy's got 2 in the car.
Hey, my name is Brian. 8 to 5, I do insurance, specialize in landlords, home, auto, all that kind of fun stuff. Retirement, I kind of agree with the self-proclaimed workaholics. I don't think retiring means soap operas and bonbons. I think it means just being financially independent. So I'd love to be financially independent within the next 10 years or so, and that's what I'm shooting for.
Awesome. Very cool.
My name's Nick Augustine. Here at this class to learn when I can retire early.
Awesome.
I'm Brian Williams. I'm financially independent, but not retired. That's the way I like it.
Nice. We should get a picture of Blake on that chair. It'd be pretty funny. Kevin does. Kevin's the only one standing. Why don't you give Kevin one before someone else comes in?
I'll just bring it over there.
Yeah.
If you want to use it.
You could let it sit on the feet by the floor if you want to, or you could sit on it. It's up to you. Yeah. Our dog.
All right. I'm Royce Quintana. When do I plan on retiring? I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay.
I was supposed to think about retirement already?
You are supposed to think about retirement. By the way, do you know what today is? Today is Royce's birthday eve. So happy birthday to Royce. Everyone give him a round of applause.
Happy birthday, Royce.
What's that?
I said I literally did nothing for that.
That's correct. Your mother did. Yeah. We're celebrating your mother. Yeah.
Call your Mom, they're clapping for you.
Royce's mom, everybody clap. I'm Joe. Yeah, I don't know that I have a true plan to just cut everything off at once, right? I would say it would be more semi-retire, phase it out.
Hey, while we go around the room, how many people, raise your hand really high, have a detailed plan about when they're going to retire and know their numbers? Whoa. Okay. That was a small number. That was my whoa for the audio people listening on the podcast. Blake.
Blake Stevens, Noco House Buyers. I fixed a hold and fix and flip for my job. So I quit my day job a year ago, but I still get a job flipping houses to make money, so not to the financial independence. I'd like to probably, and my oldest kid's 11. He might hate me already by 15. That's only 4 years. I'm probably like halfway or 2/3 of the way to like cash flow needs. So ideally I'd get there and then be able to slow down a bunch and sort of take a midlife retirement while my kids are still young enough to be at home and hang out and enjoy them and that sort of thing. So
that makes sense. Awesome. Thanks.
Hey, my name is Jay, and I plan to retire in like maybe 5 to 10 years.
That way. Yeah.
My name is Carrie. I also don't have a great plan for retirement yet, but hoping that I'll be a lot smarter at the end of this night and don't have to find a bag of money in the backyard somewhere.
Awesome.
That's the other plan.
It's been known to happen.
I'm Nick. I don't have a real detailed plan, but the overall plan is like 5 years. We'll see if that works or not.
Very cool.
My name's Scott, and I plan to retire by age 30.
Okay. How old are you now? 19. Okay. Tonight's class is going to be for you. It's really for my son, but it's like you guys are really close probably, and so you'll be able to get a ton out of this. Everyone else will be able to use it too, but it'll be really resonate for anyone who's like, I don't know, 20 to 22-ish. It'll be really good numbers for you tonight.
My name is Mitch. I don't really know my plan. I'd like to be financially independent in less than 10 years. Okay. It's already taking longer than I thought it would, but I just build stuff, so I'm not going to stop doing that, but I just would like to do it at my leisure. Okay. So that's the plan.
Awesome. Thanks.
My name is Matt. I'm a construction manager. My horizon for retirement is inside of 15 years.
Okay.
I enjoy what I do, so I just gradually like to work towards financial independence and rely less on the day job as I progress toward that goal.
Very cool. Awesome. Thanks.
I'm JB. I'm an agent. I do some fix and flips, and I have some buy and holds, and I'd like to be financially independent within the next 7 years.
Awesome. Thanks.
I'm Mike. My last day of my day job is December 18th. Work on real estate for about 16 months, and then retirement would look like being in an RV, surfing, whitewater kayaking, doing some other hobbies we enjoy, spending time with friends and family, still being involved with real estate investment and doing some volunteer work.
Nice. Awesome.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm Mike's wife, so I'm going to go around in the RV with him. And I plan on doing that in about 18 months.
Woo!
I'm James, buy and hold, and own a maintenance and light remodel company. I don't really plan on retiring. I don't see myself slowing down. I'm just kind of seeking financial independence and the ability to kind of start a couple businesses and grow those and spend a lot of time in Costa Rica if I can.
Awesome. Thanks. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julio Cesar. I actually go by my middle name, Cesar, despite the name tag. But I would like to have a goal of financial independence in the next 5 to 10 years.
Awesome. Thanks. Welcome. We missed anybody? I think Sasha was missed, and someone whose name I cannot read because he's put his arms across his chest. Oh, Paul. Sasha, the question is, who are you and when do you plan to retire? What does that look like for you?
I'm Sasha Stewart. I plan to retire in 10 years. We have a pretty good plan. We've been executing the plan for the last 15 years. Retirement for me is ability to choose whether or not I work.
Nice. Awesome.
So if I want to work, then yes, not. We're buy and hold. We have a couple of properties. The plan is to add one property every 12 to 18 months. That can, obviously, can get complicated.
Sure, no doubt.
Arrange in the plan, but that's the plan that we have.
Awesome. Welcome. Paul?
Not anything different because I do it with her.
Oh, okay, great. Well, welcome, everybody. So please do not take photos of slides or record audio video. We're recording this. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the recording goes through. Recordings are available on jamesdoran.com and on the podcast. I will tell you that I'm not sure if this one will make it up to the podcast or not, so I'm glad that people are here and able to do the live presentation. So here is the podcast. How many people are not getting the meetup emails from Holly? Raise your hand if you're not getting meetup emails. Okay, so if you guys all are getting them, you should already know about the podcast, because in every single email, Holly pretty much points out that there's a podcast. So this is the URL for the podcast. We are likely going to do a new podcast in 2019 on more of this topic, this kind of like financial independence, retiring early, financial planning for real estate investment type stuff. So they'll have the regular NCREG classes, which is all about buy and hold and investing and 1031, accounting, bookkeeping. And then a new podcast will be at like financial planning, FIRE type stuff. FIRE thing just went away. I mean, this is like the third time I've said it all night. The first time was like semi-good. It's gone already, so no one has said anything there. Oh, is there a plan? I was not aware. All right, so oh, no. Actually, here, please give me that. Thank you. Okay. So an intro to financial independence, retiring early. So a little background on this class. So I have two sons. Tammy's going to correct me. 20 years old and 22 years old. Is that right? Awesome. So both of them, like within the last 2 months, they both have just recently kind of fled the nest, and they're out on their own. And both of them came up to me, one of them after they moved out, one of them right before they moved out, and independently without talking to each other, both said to me, so Dad, I'm interested in retiring early. Can you help me with a plan? And so I happen to think about this stuff a lot. I happen to do a lot of stuff with it. So I was happy to kind of come up with some plans and some strategies for them. And this class is a book written essentially for my eldest son, which you'll see kind of later. I'll reference a bunch of stuff for him. By the way, don't call me during NCREG if you guys are calling. So my son basically is 22. I'm just going to go through the plan for him tonight. But my other son is going to be a different book. He's 90, he's 20. And there's going to be a bunch of stuff for him there. Now, what's interesting about this is my sons are 22 or 20 or whatever they are, and they want to retire early. But I see a lot of people in here that are not 19 or 20 or 22. And so really it can be about catching up for retirement. So if you find yourself in a position where you haven't quite saved the amount of money you had hoped to save at this point in order to retire, this is your opportunity to kind of put it into high gear and do a very fast catch-up model of doing this. And so if you're kind of thinking to yourself, you're talking about your 22-year-old son, it doesn't apply to me, that is not true. If you're 40, it just means that you need to do a plan that looks like this, and you're going to be retiring probably 50 or 55 or 60 or whatever it is. Okay? So we're going to go into a lot of detail. If you have questions, please let me know. So there are 70 slides. Some of the slides are really easy and they're going to be really fast. Some are pretty detailed. So I'm going to try to go pretty quickly, but we might go over because we had a lot more people do intros tonight. So can the average American achieve financial independence and retire early? I'm going to tell you what is the average American. I'm going to go through some of the income numbers and stuff like that. What is financial independence, and then what is retiring early, and what does it look like? So average income. How many people, what do you think the average income for people in the United States is? Just yell it out. 56,000. What else? 55,000. 42,000. That's actually the best way to say it, Royce, is Royce said per household. And so really it's a clarifying question, because a married couple filing jointly, according to the Census Bureau, I believe, is $117,795. That is the average in the United States for a married couple filing jointly according to tax returns. Married couple filing separately, $64,819. Head of household, $35,876. A widow or widower, $57,577. Jason, do you happen to know where this data is from? Is it 2016 tax data?
This should be 2016.
So this is 2016 tax data. And then a single person, $34,940 is what a single person average income makes in the United States. Now, I want to point out something. The difference between average and median. So average, if you have 10 people, let's say, and 9 of them make $10,000, and one of them is like Brian, they make $1 million a year, what is the average income for all of them? Well, if you take all these, you add them up, and you divide by 10, you get 151,000. Is 151,000 really representative of this group? No. No, not really at all, right? Median, on the other hand, is you take all of the numbers, you find the middlemost number, and that's what the median is. So in this case, you have 10, you have 9, whatever it is, 5, 7, 10,000, whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10,000 ones, and then $1 million one. The median is $10,000 for this group, and that's much more representative. So we talked about averages here, and they could get skewed. So you have a whole bunch of really high earners can push these numbers to crazy numbers, when it really not may be representative. Really, it's better to think about median. So what is the average American? The 2017 median household income in the United States looks like in Colorado, it's somewhere around $60,000. Let's see, median means that we're covering 50% of the population. So if you look at this, this means about half of them are lower, half of them are higher. So it means that you're covering half of the population by the median. Half of the people make less than that, in other words. So right here, in the United States, half the population is lower than this amount and half is higher. The median household income for the census data is $60,000 a year. Does that seem more in line with what you thought? Yes. Okay. So, for personal reasons tonight and other times when you kind of see me teaching this, you might see me use $70,000 per year or $18,000 per year. And you can probably guess the reasons for the two different numbers. Okay? So types of capital. So I think about this a lot. I think about what it means to have capital, the ability to make money. There's financial capital, the financial capital is the one you're probably thinking of. It's money that you can go and you can invest and get a return on and have it bring more money in. That's the one everyone's used to seeing. But there's a more common one that actually everyone starts with, and it's human capital. Human capital is your ability to earn. And so if you're earning $60,000 per year, which is the median, that's $5,000 per month. Here's what this human capital might mean for you. If you had actually invested $3,000 and you were able to get a 4% return on that, so you were able to go invest $3,000 in the stock market or something like that, and you were able to take 4% from that each year, you would get $10 a month. So I call this my Netflix rule or my Qdoba burrito rule, but basically in order for me in retirement to enjoy a burrito every single month, I need to have $3,000 invested somewhere in order to get that each month to be able to do it. If I want to have a burrito every day, 30 days a week or 30 days a month, then I would need 30 times this in order to be able to do it. Okay? Therefore, for $1,000 a month, you would need to have $300,000 invested at 4% in order to make $1,000 a month in income. Does that surprise anybody? Brian? You look surprised. I do. Oh, you were like looking over like there's something going on.
I was looking at Royce because he looked like something was going on.
Oh, what was going on?
Trying to see if someone was here that I thought was going to be.
Oh, okay. Therefore, if you need to make $5,000 per month, which is what this median income is, your working is like having $1.5 million already in human capital. Let me explain what I mean by that. By earning $60,000 a year, it's like you have $1.5 million in the bank, earning 4%. So your human capital, your ability to go get a job and work, is really you having $1.5 million. Does that make sense to people? So you're already wealthy in a lot of ways because you have the ability to work and earn this. And if you're married, basically you each have $750,000 if you're each earning $30,000 a year. Okay? A $1 an hour raise is $2,000 per year. It's like getting $50,000 more in human capital invested at 4%. So every time you go get a dollar raise, it's like your boss said to you, here's $50,000 more in an account that you're now earning that capital on. So even at a minimum wage of $10.20 an hour, you have $510,000 of human capital right now. A couple working minimum wage starts life with $1 million in human capital. Okay? Now, what you do, by the way, what you do with that is up to you. I think about retirement, personally, this is how I actually think about it, is converting your human capital into financial capital to generate passive income. Really, it's you're buying back your own time by choosing to live life at a lower standard of living than your full earnings and investing the difference. Okay? So what we're doing is we're going to go out there, we're going to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, whatever it is for the workaholics, and you're going to take part of that money and you're going to say, I'm going to trade this human capital I have right now, my ability to earn, I'm going to invest in something else so that I no longer need to work at some point in the future, and that can now provide for me. Does that sort of make sense? Okay. All right, so safe withdrawal rates. So next week's class is, imagine you have $1 million. How much money can you safely take out of that $1 million to live on where you will not run out of money for your retirement? That is the idea behind safe withdrawal rates. Is that enough for you to live on for the rest of your life? Or how much can you withdraw and will you run out of money? What can you invest in? So this class tonight is not this topic. That's next week. Next week I'm going to show you the $1 million problem and how we think about this. But tonight I want to explain to you what safe withdrawal rate is because we use it. We're trying to build up where we have enough money where whatever we're taking out safely is going to provide enough passive income for us to survive in retirement. Okay? That's really what it's going to come down to. What is the safe withdrawal rate you can have? And then how much money do you need to do that? So it all goes back to, there's actually one study from before this I've recently found out, but it goes back to this concept of the Trinity study. So there were 3 professors who went to Trinity University, or work at Trinity University, and they did this study. And the study basically went like this. They wanted to find out how much somebody in retirement could withdraw from their retirement savings safely each year and not run out of money over a 30-year period. What they basically said is, if you retire at 65 and you have a chance to live to maybe 95, how much money can you take out of your retirement account? What percentage can you take out of your retirement account where you will not run out of money? And they did a whole bunch of studies on this. They went and they back tested against historic data from the stock market, and they determined what a safe withdrawal percentage is where you are not likely to run out of money. Does anyone know what the number is? 4% is the rule that they came up with. They basically determined that you can withdraw it, and before you write it down, realize that I'm going to tell you the rule is wrong. Okay? So 4% is the number that they came up with, and there's some problems with the rule, but 4% is the number that they came up with. They basically said, I could take out 4% of my portfolio each year, adjusting for inflation. So I start off with 4%, and then each year I increase it by whatever CPI is, Consumer Price Index, or whatever it's called, the inflation rate, and then I would have that much money. So my spending power remains the same, but I'm actually taking a little bit more out each year until I can live for 30 years in retirement. A couple interesting points about this study. And where a lot of people claim that it's flawed. The first point is, the study only covered 30 years. How many people plan on retiring and will be retired for more than 30 years? Raise your hands really high. Okay, so the study does not apply to you. Because the study went and said, it was okay for you to be at $0 at the end of 30 years. So how would you like to retire at 40, and when you're 70 and you no longer can go convert your human capital to actual money to live on, you run out of money and have no more money to live on? How many sounds like that's a really good idea? Right? And that's the problem with it. So if you think that that's going to be potentially problematic for you, then that's one thing. The other thing that was interesting is they only used data back to 1997, I believe, in the original study, and we are now in an environment where the price of stocks to their earnings is out of whack. The earnings are lower compared to the price that they are, and so we're in a high-risk environment. Where what if you actually had this $1 million, you invest $1 million today, and tomorrow we have a market correction, or last week we have a market correction. And now all of a sudden you thought you were going to be living on $1 million, and you're living on $900,000 or $800,000. That's potentially problematic. Okay, and it's more likely to happen in this case. Okay, so they basically they're trying to determine safe withdrawal rates for retirement portfolios. They studied a mix of stocks and bonds using actual historical data to determine what is reasonable. Here, this for you. They studied a mix of stocks and bonds, and I believe this study actually used a 75% stocks and 25% bonds, although they did a couple different tests of some different portfolio mixes. They only studied a 30-year retirement period, which is not ideal for early retirement, and it was okay to end up with $0 at the end. Depletion was fine. Okay? Oh, another case about this is I forget the exact number, but it was like 2/3 of the times, two-thirds of the runs through this testing, you end up with more money than you started with. So in a lot of cases, 4% was conservative. However, in those cases where you ended up running out of money at the very end and you planned on using it for more than 30 years, that's really problematic. Okay? So a lot of times, would you say, hey, listen, 9 times out of 10, this plan's going to work fine for me. Are you okay with that? No. Right? I don't think I'm okay with that. But that's what they're basically saying in some cases. All right, so for today, a safe withdrawal rate of 3.25% of stocks and cash flow, of 3.25% of stocks, and then cash flow from rentals. So for tonight's presentation, and this is based on a couple other studies. There was a really geeky guy. I've got like a man crush on this guy. He basically went back through and he tested more data, and he did a bunch of studies on safe withdrawal rates for a longer period of time. I think he extended the study out to 60 years or something like that. And he went to Freaky Town. I was like, Jason sent me over the link to this guy's stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is like my brother from another mother. He is like going to crazy town with charts. Like I saw the charts, I was like, oh, this is amazing. So it was really, really good. But he basically went and showed that in our current market, a 3.25% safe withdrawal rate is much more conservative and something you probably should plug in if you're going to do it yourself. Okay? So if you learn nothing else tonight, go ahead and take whatever amount of money you have in your retirement account or you think you're going to need for your retirement account, and if you multiply it by 0.0325, that's the amount you could take out per year safely. Okay? That's a shortcut for this. All right. So for tonight, I'm going to use 3.25% as the amount that my son or you, whatever it is going to do, can pull out of their stock market investing account safely without running out of money, especially since he's going to retire early. He's going to have more than a 30-year time horizon. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. And then any cash flow you get from rentals. After you actually take the rent, you subtract out all of your expenses. If you got property management, your taxes, your insurance, your mortgage payments, vacancy, all that stuff, any cash flow that's left over, that can also count towards your retirement. So we're going to do some scenarios where it's all stocks. We're going to do some scenarios where we talk about real estate as well. And the cash flow counts in addition to any amount you have invested in the stock market. Does that make sense? Okay. So how close is early retirement? I saw this really interesting post. How many people know who Mr. Money Mustache is? Okay, good. So he has a website, and on one of his early posts, actually, he has this really cool chart from a website called Networthify. And the Networthify website is down. If it ever comes up, please let me know. Drop me an email and let me know if it comes back up. But I've been trying to access it for like 3 weeks now. But it's basically down. It showed what percentage of your money that you save, how long it will take you to achieve functional retirement, where you have enough saved up from saving that amount. So it'll say if you save 10% of your paycheck, it'll take you 37 years in order to retire. If you save 20% of your paycheck, it'll take you this many years in order to retire. And so what I did, because the website's down, is I tried to recreate that data for you. So Networthify seems to be permanently down, so I did it on this. So how close is early retirement? Go ahead and write down, or put in your head, how much money you make per month or per year. It doesn't matter. We're going to do some math together. So go ahead and write it down or think to yourself how much money you make per month or per year. It doesn't matter which one, because you could do it either way. Gross. Okay? Take 10% of that number. For those of you that don't know how to take 10%, move the decimal over 1. Okay? Take 10% of that number. Does everyone here have 10% of their income? Everyone know what it is? Anyone not have it yet? Okay. So you're living off of 90% of your human capital, all expenses, including taxes. So I want you to imagine for a minute, you're taking that 10% and you are saving it. You're living off of the other 90%, including taxes, all of your expenses, all of your irregular expenses like your vacations and your new cars and everything. You got to be living on the 90% in this example, okay? If you take the 10% though and you invest it, your income remains the same. So I've actually really dumbed this down. This is not the way I normally model things, so I actually had to change some of my assumptions. So in this case, your income remains the same. You get absolutely no raises, no inflation at all. You get no increase in expenses. Your expenses stay fixed. You don't get any changes from inflation or any changes in your standard of living. You have no increase in savings from inflation or trying to catch up or inheritance or anything like that. You're earning 8% in the stock market per year consistently. That's another assumption we made here. And you own no real estate, not even your primary residence. When will 4% of your stock market account cover your yearly expenses? When do you think it will happen? If you take 10% and you're investing it, and these are the assumptions, when will you have enough to retire? When do you think? Call it out. Never.
30 years.
30 years, 32 years. What else? 50 years. Or, this is another way of saying it, 4% divided by 12 months covers your monthly expenses. which for this first example is 90% of your income because you're saving 10%. So this is a really interesting point. So I'm not saying you need enough, this 4% needs to be enough for 100% of your income. I'm saying this 4% needs to be enough to support 90% of your income to maintain your same lifestyle. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there anyone who's missing that point? Because it's really, really important later on. All you're trying to replace is 90% of your income. You're not trying to replace 100. Everyone clear on that? Anyone missing that point? Okay, good. So what's your guess? We talked about some different numbers. At 10% saved, no inflation, it takes you 37 years and 10 months for you to basically get enough so that you reach 100% of your replacement income, your target income in retirement. Okay? So it takes you that long, 37 years and 10 months. Does that surprise anybody? So if you were on the 10% savings plan, this is the plan you're on. So go ahead and take your age now, try to subtract out any money you already have saved, and figure out how much longer you need to go. How old will you be? Dead. Royce says 14. You're going to be dead. Okay. So now take 10% of your income and double it. You're going to save 20% of your income now. You're going to get crazy. You're going to live on 80% of your human capital. We're also now targeting an 80% of your income in order to consider yourself functionally retired. Because you no longer need to get 100% of your income, you don't need to get 90, you only need to replace 80% of your income to be retired because you're living on 80% now. Does that make sense to everybody? So, if you can save that much, how long do you think it will take to achieve financial independence and retire? You knew it was 37 years before.
14.
What is it, 14, 15? 17, 22? 10? Here are the two lines. So 20% is 338 months, 28 years and 2 months. So you end up doing it about a decade faster. By saving twice as much money, you cut a decade off your retirement time. Okay?
You're actually you're not getting the same income level.
That's right. You're living on the same standard of living you have. You're replacing the current standard of living you have in retirement.
Are you also calculating it to 100% of your income anywhere in this deck?
No. I'm always doing what you're living on, your current standard of living.
Some would say that you're sacrificing, I should probably have the mic, but some would say you're sacrificing now to earn later, right? Or to retire earlier. But you may want to be at that point.
Yeah, so what Brian basically said is some would argue that you're actually sacrificing now and you want to be at a higher income level later. I do discuss that in like 4 or 5 slides at the very end, because there's choices sometimes you make where if you go one path, you may actually hit fire earlier, but you may, but you may actually end up not making as much money in retirement later on. So you may trade off speed for overall standard of living later. And I'll show you some charts on that. I do that one. All right. So take your original 10%, now triple it. If you save that much, how long will it take to have the same lifestyle? What do you think? 14 years? 20 years. Turns out it's about 6 years faster. It takes you 22 years and 2 months, 266 months to do that. That's the green line there. When the green line crosses 100%, then you've actually met the amount of money you needed to your 70% of your income number. Okay? All right, so here it is. I'll kind of jump to the chase here. Here it is for 10% all the way through to 90%. So if you are able to live on 10% of your income, you can actually retire in 2 years and 7 months. Okay, so Jason just goes, yes. So basically, if you were able to, let's say you're making $20,000 a month, if you can live on $2,000 and make $20,000 a month, you can be retired in 2 years and 7 months based on that plan. If you're able to do 30%, 22 years, we talked about that one, 40%, 17, 14, 10, 7, 5, 2, those are the different numbers. Okay? So the amount that you save is really, really important. All right, let's talk about inflation though, because remember, part of my assumptions before were we were not taking into account that your income was increasing to inflation, that your expenses were increasing from inflation, that the amount you were saving was increasing from inflation. And so basically your target goal in retirement was not actually higher either. You were living on, if you're making $5,000, if you're living on $5,000 a month now, 20 years from now, you're still living on $5,000. I will tell you definitively, $5,000, 20 years in the future is not going to be the same. Right? Your standard of living is going to be much lower. So you really do need to take into account inflation. So I did a bunch of studies on inflation. I'm going to try to give you the really short abridged one because it's probably really dense material and we're short on time. But this is a breakdown of the consumer price index for all you urban consumers, U.S. city average. And I wanted to point out here, I want to point nothing out on here because I can't find it and I don't want to wait. Inflation immunity. So, I know what I wanted to point out here. Your home costs. Shelter. So shelter right here, basically they're saying that the amount your shelter is increasing is 3.3% per year for 12 months. That's what the rate of inflation is for shelter, okay, according to CPI. The government, you pay for that. Thank you very much. So here's an interesting one. What if I could offer you the ability to be immune to inflation on 25 to 50% of your personal expenses? What if I told you we can ignore inflation on 25 to 50% of your expenses? How many people would be interested in that? Okay, buy a house, right? Because once you fix in your principal and interest part of your payment, that is no longer affected by inflation. You are immune to inflation for that part of it. Of course, taxes and insurance go up, but the big part of your payment becomes immune because you've locked it in today's dollars, okay? So basically, I'll show you this. The average person, according to Credit Counseling Society, pays 35% for their housing. That's a normal distribution. So about a third of your income or so is set aside for housing. I'll show you another chart here which shows you that that's bogus. So right here it shows you the percentage of the income spent on rent and how much income people make. So 60,000 or so is right here. According to this, depending on what age you are, you're probably in that 25% or so range for housing. However, if you're in the $30,000 your income, you're spending a lot more, 30% of your income. And people that are actually making even less than that, they're spending a lot larger percentage of their income on rent. When you make more money, if you're making $40,000 a month, you tend to spend a much lower percentage of your income on rent. Okay? So according to the Consumer Price Index, basically this shows you what percentage that they're actually allotting for inflation, and it's about 32% of the overall CPI index is for shelter, is for your housing. Let's see. So if we have fixed shelter costs, we can get rid of about a third of the inflation risk. Principal interest is fixed duration for the loan, then goes to zero. The other interesting thing about owning a property is what happens after 30 years on a 30-year loan? It goes away. So you no longer have that part of your rent, right? Your mortgage goes away. You no longer have that expense on your thing. Taxes, insurance, maintenance, capital expenses are not fixed and are subject to inflation. Okay. Here's another chart that's crazy. Basically, it's showing you that shelter makes up a disproportionately large percentage of your its importance, and it tends to be a higher thing that is affected by inflation. So it's both double whammy. It's a big part of your budget, and also it's impacted by inflation a lot. Okay? I'm not going to cover this chart for time's sake. Here's the annual inflation rate over time going all the way back to 1958. This is the 2% line for those that are seeing it. It peaked at about 12% or so, and whatever that is, 1979, 1980. The average for this whole period is 3.7. The median is 2.7% per year. That is what we're seeing for inflation over a long period of time. All right, so now we're going to talk about fire. Yeah, there you go. For JC and maybe for you. So I'm going to be writing an entire book on this. JC's 22 years old. He's just graduated from college with a software engineering degree. He's earning about $70,000 per year, which isn't very far off from what the median income is, and it's probably a little bit higher in Colorado anyway. He is able to save about 30% of his gross income per month. Okay? This is an important factor. If he really is serious about retiring early, he will continue living like a college student and save as much money as he can toward retirement. So it's his choice, whatever he wants to do. He earns about $58.33 per month. He's saving about $17.50 per month. That's what his savings rate is. So he's living on $2,627.33 per month after taxes. So basically you take the $58.33, you multiply by whatever tax rate is, you minus the $17.50. This is what you're left over after taxes. That's what he's living on. His target income in retirement is $4,083 a month, and that is before taxes. So he's trying to get to the point where he's making about $4,000, $4,100 per month in order to be able to retire. Okay? We're assuming a 3.25% yearly safe withdrawal rate, which I talked about before as to why we're using that number. Let's see how quickly we can get him to financial independence so he can retire early.
I'm curious, when you talk about this with him, is he okay living in retirement like he's a college kid still?
You'll see. It actually gets much better.
Sure.
Yeah, but you'll see. But basically, you're trying to see if I get to this target monthly income in retirement quickly, and then I know that over time it's actually going to increase, I'm okay with that. Yeah. That's correct. Yeah. Basically, if he's not making any more money after that point too. That's right. Yep. So when does his safe withdrawal rate on any stocks, bonds, or cash that he has and any cash flow from rentals exceed $4,083 per month? That is the target for retirement for him. We're trying to figure out when this will happen. Do you have a question? What's that?
Did you model what it looks like if you negotiated a higher salary?
I did not model that, but that's pretty funny though.
Set it off mic, now it's on mic.
Yeah. Okay. I did not model that. That's pretty funny though. It's got to have a double event though. It's
Tammy goes on vacation.
All right. That's pretty crazy. Okay, so VTSMX is the entire, I think, U.S. stock market index fund, really low cost. And this is basically how did the entire stock market perform over a very long period of time. It goes all the way back to 1871 and all the way up to 2017. And it shows you what the yearly returns were for this entire index if you were going to take your money, invest in this index fund, and just let it sit there and ride it out for there. And so this shows you all the different returns. This shows you a distribution of all the different returns. There's like 3 years where it was between -42 and -30. There's like 1 year where it was between 53 and 65, but the majority of the returns are between -6.85 and +29.15. So this shows you a distribution curve of those. You don't need to know anything about that. I'm going to go into some stuff. What this presentation does ignore, and it is a huge deal, and there's going to be other classes on this. I would probably do entire books on this and do a lot of Monte Carlo modeling, but it ignores sequence of return risk. Here's what I mean by that. Let's pretend for a minute JC decides, I'm going to really hustle and I'm going to retire in 20 years. It's an arbitrary number for now. What happens if on the 20-year date that he decides to retire, he has a 10% or 20% market correction, and the stock market goes down significantly the day he's going to retire? That's problematic in a lot of cases. Because now he was planning on being able to live off of $1 million, and now he only has $800,000 to live on. So the sequence of return risk is huge. And we are in a very dangerous environment right now in the stock market, so that if you're considering retiring right now, this is probably one of the most precarious times ever to retire. If you're relying on, well, if you're relying on anything, but stocks in particular. Okay? So what happens if you have a market correction a month after you retire? I'm going to teach other classes on this. It's a big deal. You want to study this. For periods between 1871 and 2017, the average for the stock market, the entire U.S. stock market during that time period, was 10.57% per year. And this is actual data. I looked at the actual data this time. The median is 11.23% per year. The compounding annual growth rate, the CAGR or whatever they call it, is 8.97. So we're going to use the CAGR of 8.97 and assume incorrectly. This assumption is totally incorrect. I'm going to assume that is unchanging and that we're getting that standardized return every single month for the entire duration. Okay? When in fact, I just showed you that's not true. There's a whole bunch of really big negative years just over here. So that assumption is just horrible to begin with. But I wanted to start somewhere and show you like a baseline. We can go and model the sequence of returns risk elsewhere, not tonight, because you're not going to have time. Okay, whoops. Jumped ahead of myself. So we're modeling that, it's unchanging. Okay, so if he's saving 30% and he's investing in stocks, he can fire in 346 months or 28 years and 10 months. So you save for 30%, you save 30% and you're able to do that. This is basically the time period that he does it. Where it crosses this little red dashed line is where he can actually do functional retirement. And this is the amount he could do if he waited later. So his income over time is actually increasing based on this model. Okay? Oh, yeah, 51. Yeah, approximately age 51. Whatever it is, 28 years and 10 months. So 22 plus that is what? 40, 51. Yep. Okay? Any questions on this? This is kind of like our baseline case. All right. So what happens if we add a single nomad property? He's heard me talking about nomad. He says, hey, maybe there's something to this nomad thing. What if we just buy one property? How does that impact my ability to retire? It eliminates most inflation on his housing expenses. His rent's not going up anymore. He basically can lock in a fixed payment and do that. Except for taxes, insurance, and maintenance, which those are going up with inflation. He locks in the principal and interest part of his housing payment. The principal and interest goes away completely after 30 years if he does not prepay. Now, I'm going to go into prepaying tonight. His personal expenses drop from $26.27, which included his rent, to $15.27.33, as we took out his rent payment. However, the amount of money he pays for the house is more expensive than his rent. Okay? So it's actually going to be higher than that. We're going to dip into that $17.50 that he was saving so that he can live in the house. So he's no longer going to, basically part of that $17.50 is going to be paying for the house itself. Are you cold? It's like hot as balls in here.
Well.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not a socially acceptable comment.
There's a UFC fight you need to see.
Well, there's that. Okay.
You said it, James, not me.
That is true. All right. So he's, yeah, see, other people are taking off their jackets. Maybe crack the door or something. Saves up the 5%. Saves up to get 5% down payment and closing costs from his $17.50 per month, and then he buys a nomad property. That's what we're assuming in this case. A $300,000 property, he needs to save about $15,000 plus closing costs in order to be able to buy it. The mortgage is more expensive than his rent payment. This reduces the $17.50 per month that he was able to previously invest in stocks. So he's no longer able to save the amount of money he was investing in stocks because his housing costs went up from where his rent was. Does that make sense, everybody? Instead of renting, you're paying more for housing. You would think this could potentially hurt you. We'll see. So here are the personal expenses. This is a chart showing the two different scenarios. One where he's actually investing in stocks. That's the red line. And so it shows you how much his personal expenses are, including real estate. So they are much lower here. And they increase until they don't, actually they never go down. So they increase the whole time for investing in stocks. Okay, that's his personal expenses over time. However, with the housing, if he goes and buys a house, his expenses are higher than they were if he were renting. But eventually, they get to the point where they're about the same as what he would be renting. It takes about 30 years, and then something magical happens. Why does this drop off here? The house is paid off, and so then his expenses go way down. He no longer has that housing expense, and he's able to save a lot more. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is a similar chart, except this is total amount saved. So with the house, he's able to save less. He's able to save about the same at the point where he's about to pay off his mortgage. Then his savings rate jumps up considerably, and he's able to save more for this period of time. But realize, though, this is 30 years out. If we're trying to retire early, is that going to help him? What do you think? Probably not, right? So here's the total amount saved when you adjust for inflation. If I go and I divide through by whatever the inflation rate is, you can see that he's able to save the same $17.50 perpetually when we're doing the stock market plan. But with the housing plan, he is able to actually increase his savings because inflation is not affecting him as much with this one, and then eventually goes way up and it stabilizes there. Okay? All right, so here's where it is. If he actually does the stock market, he's able to retire here. If he does the house, the single nomad property, it's later. It's not as good for him to buy a single nomad property. Blasphemy. What is a real estate broker coming up in front of a room to a large room of people and saying, don't buy a house? Buy more than one. Right? Buy more than one, it might be the answer. But right now it looks bad, right? You basically bought a single house. It's not as good for you. In the long term, it's better. Look at these charts. You end up saving more, right? But in the short term, not so much. Like when you're trying to retire, it's better for you to save the 30% in the stock market. Okay, so it's 402 months versus 346. It's faster to save the 30% in stocks than to buy an owner-occupant property. However, better standard of living once the house is paid off. This is sort of to Brian's point about when you own the house and your mortgage then goes to zero, you now have an extra, whatever that is, $1,500 a month or so, whatever the mortgage payment was, that you can spend on living expenses. Where you're renting, you no longer get that. Microphone? Is it on? Oh, wait, we got to turn the microphone on.
I love you. So this doesn't take into account any tax benefits or anything else you get from buying a house,
No,
right?
it does not.
Okay.
In this case, it does not.
I just want to make sure.
Nope, it doesn't. Okay, so it's better standard living when tax benefit. What if we had a second nomad? What impact does that have? You buy two 5% down payment nomads and you save 30% in stocks for the difference. You're going to add one rental property. Your cash flow contributes towards your target monthly income in retirement. So it's no longer just the income from the stocks, that 3.25% safe withdrawal rate. You also have positive cash flow, and that's going to count. Does this help us get the fire faster? And if so, how much do you think? How much faster is this going to be? Is it going to be better than saving 30%? Yes. The guess is yes. Any other guesses? There's one other guess people want to have.
Maybe.
Okay. So this is what's going to happen. In the green one, basically you own 0 houses, the number of houses owned. In the green one, you don't own any houses, so you have 0 houses for the entire duration. With the red one, you're actually going to buy a house right here, and you're only going to, I'm sorry, with the blue one, which is hidden behind here, you're going to buy one house at about 6 months in. That's how long it takes him to save, and he's going to own 1 house for the duration. With the red one, where we're going to buy 2, he's able to buy a house at month like 7, and then he has to save for a year or so in order to month 25 before he can buy a second property. So he's not buying the 2 properties immediately. He's nomading. He's moving into one after he saves up. He's saving up for the next one, waiting a year, and moving into the next one. So all I'm showing is that the purchases are delayed.
How did he save what?
$1,750 a month is what he's able to save.
How did he save 5% of a $300,000 house in 6 months?
Yeah, there's some math challenges there. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. I do cover it. Okay, so just save that question for later. I will get to it. So basically, when he buys the house, though, if you'd put 20% down on this house, it would have break-even cash flow. Wouldn't have positive cash flow, it would be break-even. In this case, though, he only put 5% down and he has PMI. And so cash flow on the property, when he converts it to a rental, it's negative. So that $1,750 or so per month that he was saving, he's no longer saving $1,750 because he has to set aside some of this money for negative cash flow. It's like $150 a month negative on this property. Okay? So he's buying a property voluntarily where the mortgage he's paying is higher than what rent is, and the cash flow on it is negative. Okay? So buys the property. By the time he gets to month 25 or so, he's got negative cash flow. He holds it for a little while. Rents bump up. Hold it for a little while. Rents bump up. Rents bump up. Until finally, in month 80 or so, he's at about break-even cash flow on this property. So it takes a while for him to get to break even with this model. Then eventually, though, some of this money starts to contribute to his retirement. And if we're going to buy more houses, it's going to exacerbate this problem of having negative cash flow. He's going to have more negative cash flow with the additional purchases he has. It's going to take him a long time to get caught up with the negative cash flow. Does that make sense to everybody? When you're buying these houses with 5% down, you're having negative cash flow, according to my assumptions. Okay. Yeah, and this even includes depreciation. So that chart right there includes some depreciation benefit. So he's negative even after the depreciation cash flow. Okay, so this is the amount of cash flow over the full length here. This is what we were zoomed in on before, this kind of like left section. So it's really small and negative. Then it gets bigger and bigger, 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 bigger. What happens right here is a little bitty drop off at like, I don't know, month 350 something. Why does it drop off? That's not the reason. Why does it drop off before it jumps way up? Not this part. Why does it drop off here? Depreciation goes away. So at year 27 and a half years, he no longer has cash flow from depreciation. No longer gets that benefit. So depreciation goes away. His cash flow gets worse for a little tiny bit. Then the house gets paid off. His cash flow gets way better. And then cash flow continues. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, there's no cash flow for the other model where both he's living in the property and when he just decided to rent and invest in the stocks. Okay. So here it is. Basically, here's the stock one, which is 346 months. If he does 2 nomad properties, it's 367 months. If he does 1, it's 402. So it is better to buy 2 by like whatever that is, 35 months or so, 3 years or so. It's better to do that, but it is not as good as investing 30% in stocks only. So if he only does 2 nomad properties, it's not as good as if he decided to just invest in stocks. Make sense? Okay. All right, so what happens if he adds another one? Apparently I added 2 more. So this is 3 properties and 4 properties. It shows you that the green line is the 30% saving in the stock market. So that is the second fastest retirement one. The faster one, the one that is sooner for retirement, is buying 4 Nomad properties. So buying 3 Nomad properties, 1 where you live in, 2 rentals, gets you closer, but it actually is not better than the 30% one. And that's what this shows you. Buying 1, 402 months to retirement. Buying 2, 367 months to retirement. Buying 3, 351 months. Just investing in the stock market, 346. If you buy 4, though, it's 331. So he's able to retire in 27 years, 7 months, which is 49-ish. Okay? Any questions? This is easy. All right, I went to Freaky Town. So I think I added up to 10 rentals, 11 Nomad properties to see how this impacts how quickly you can retire. Nobody wants to know this, so I'm going to skip this slide. So really, you can see it kind of gets busy up in here. So I actually did the chart for you so you can see the actual numbers. So speed maxes out. You eventually get to the point where you're not able to get the benefits of the positive cash flow from the properties quick enough, so it doesn't matter if you bought more in the short term. In the long term, it matters, because now you have 10 rental properties instead of 4 or 5 or 6. But in the short term, it doesn't get you to retirement faster by buying 10 or 11. In fact, it hurts. Microphone. Brian.
You're only taking cash flow into account. You're not actually saying, oh, as a savings mechanism, you can wait 10 years and sell these houses if they've gone up in value and apply that to your financial
That is a
savings.
really good point. The model I'm doing right now is cash flow from rental properties and any amount you saved in the stock market. You're right. There's all sorts of crazy variations. I'm going to cover a few of them tonight, but I don't have time to go into all the details of sell properties off, pay off half of them, get free and clear cash flow, and do stuff like that, because that may be faster. And we can definitely cover those in future classes, but that's not going to be tonight. I'm going to cover some interesting ones like paying off loans monthly, paying off loans once you have big chunks, recasting loans, getting gift money for down payments. I'm going to cover a bunch of different scenarios tonight, but not that one in particular. Yeah, question, Jim.
How often are you buying the next Nomad?
1 year is about what you can do, because you can't do it any sooner than 12 months, but it takes them about that long to save for it. Okay? So in this case, I'm not going to cover all these, but you can see the 30% saved is right before 4 properties, and then it gets faster if you do 5 properties, faster if you do 6, faster if you do 7, faster if you do 8, faster if you do 9, but 9, 10, and 11 are the same. There's no benefit for doing those last 3 in the short term. In the long term, there is, because you have more money coming in eventually from passive income. Okay? So
Royce just asked, I think, the same question. You're not taking into account any of the equity.
No equity at all. This is a non-equity type discussion, because equity is not spendable in retirement. You'd have to go do cash out refinance or something like that. But that is something we could definitely test and see if that could speed things up. And that's something we can do with the calculator.
Right. I mean, you can imagine in our last 7 years of our market, if you'd have bought 6 houses 7 years ago and they all went up $120,000
yeah, you
each.
sell 3 and you pay off the 3 other ones. This is basically the building wealth formula from that, or creating wealth formula.
From Robert Allen.
Totally. Don't have my drink. Okay, so basically 3 of those right there. All right, so legacy nomad. So how lucky are JC and Tim if your parents are willing to gift you down payment money? Very lucky. How much of an impact does that have? Everyone assumes it's a lot. How much do you think it is? Do you think it buys you 10 years? No. Do you think it buys you 5 years? Do you think it buys you a month?
How generous are you?
How generous are you? We're only gifting down payment money. 5%. You can only buy 1 a year if you're doing Nomad.
What about 20% properties?
What about 20% properties? I didn't model that, but how much faster can they retire if we gift them down payments to do Nomad? Basically, you say, JC says, I want to go buy a house. I say no problem. I will gift you 5% down payment. You can buy the house immediately and do that. And so to kind of Brian's point about, that 4 or 5 or 6 months he's able to save up money, this is one of the ways that we're addressing that. We're saying we gift them money in one example. Okay? So what does that mean? Let's see what happens if we gift them the 5% down payment money. So instead of buying the house in month 6 or month 7, wherever it was, he's able to buy the house, the first house, in month 1. Because we gifted him down payment money and he's able to do that. Now, for those of you that are a little bit more established and you have enough down payment for your first one, you don't even need the gift. You can actually use your own first down payment, and now you start here. So it does buy you a little bit of time. Okay? So he doesn't need to save. Basically, he buys month 1 instead of month 7. Told you that. So how much faster? If we gift him the money, he can retire and buy 2 Nomad properties, 1 to live in, 1 to rent. He can retire in 361 months with gift money. If he did it on his own, it's 367 months. So gifting him money buys him 6 months. 6 months. Is that significant? Can be.
Over time.
So let's look at when he's buying the properties. So we talked about this. This is basically buying more. So with this one, he's buying them all up front, and then he's able to buy his second property if we gifted it to him, basically in month 12 or 13, whatever this is. Okay, so he's able to do it faster. Before, he bought it in month 7, and it took him a while to save up for the next one. It took him this long. He's able to buy the houses faster. Does that make sense? Okay. So 2 years faster to fire with Legacy Nomad. What if you did the full 11? He'd be able to retire in 289 months if he did it himself, or 265 months if we gifted him all of the down payments. So what is that? 2 years. So us gifting him 11 down payments buys our son 2 years to faster retirement.
What if you just gift him that all up front on day 1? Does he get there way
I didn't
faster?
do that, but we could do that. Yeah. Yep, so we could do that. But you can basically see the difference now, 2 years. Any questions on this? Do you think that that's as big of an advantage now as it was before? It might be for someone who is not able to save 30% and build up their own down payments. Like, I have another son, hypothetically, who may not be able to save up as much for his down payments. What if I gifted them down payments and had them jumpstart their stuff? That has a much bigger impact. And there's a book coming about that one. It's called How to Quit College, Work a Minimum Wage Job, and Acquire a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio and retire by the time you're 28 or something like that. That's the book. Okay? And it involves gift money from your parents for buying a couple houses early on. Okay? So, 2 years faster to fire Legacy, doing that. No gifts. Let's pretend Jace Lee is fiercely independent, which he is, and he decides he wants to Frank Sinatra it. He wants to do it his way. Okay? Wow, this must be a really young audience tonight. No gifted down payments. What if he wants to do 1 Nomad, do 1 5% down, and then the rest of the time he's going to save up a full 20%, not move into the properties, and just buy rentals? Okay? Amen. These are 20% down, break-even cash flow properties when acquired, essentially. So is this faster? How much faster? How much faster is buying 20% down properties as straight rentals than doing Nomad?
Were you pulling PMI out when they hit a certain equity level in the previous example?
I was not in that case. We should model that too, though.
I was just figuring out what my guess was going to be, so I needed to know.
You're going all the way to the point of PMI calculations? I mean, that's pretty hardcore.
And he's invested in the rest of the time that he's saving for the 20%?
Yes, you're invested in the stock market, leaving the money in the stock market until you have enough for down payment, and then it comes out and does that. So you're getting a return on the money you're saving in the meantime.
It's probably a strong argument to say you shouldn't do that if you don't have a long enough time horizon.
You and I should discuss that offline because I don't know if I agree with that. I've got some really interesting data on that. Okay? All right, ready? 20% down payment is slower. So this is 30% saved, 346. 2 Nomads, 5% down payment with gift money is 361. 2 Nomads where he does it himself, he saves for his own down payment is 367. If he does 1 20% down payment rental and 1 Nomad property where he's saving himself, takes 387 months. So about 20 months slower than doing his own Nomad model. So in other words, doing Nomad is faster than doing a single 20% down payment rental property. But what happens if you want to do more? What if you do 10 20% down payment rentals? Here's 10 of them. It's 356 months. It would have been 346 for 30% saved. If you did 11 nomads, which is the same as having 10 rentals in the one you're living in, it's 289. If you do 11 nomads, 10 rentals, one where you live in, and you get gift money, it's 265. So it's still slower to do the 20% down payment rentals. Taking the time to save up the 20% slows down your ability to retire. It's what the math suggests. Okay? Any questions on that? 'Cause that's kind of a big point. Nothing? Okay. Because it takes longer to acquire them. So the yellow one is you doing the nomads as gifts. That's the fastest one. You're basically able to buy every 12 months. That's your fastest way to acquire properties. Get gift money from your parents. Make sense? The next fastest way is if you do nomad yourself, you save up 5% and you buy them as quickly as you can. That's the next fastest. The third fastest, the slowest, is the saving up 20% down payments in order to buy the rental properties with 20% down. That takes the longest. And then the other blue line is you're not buying any properties at all, so you have no acquisitions. Any questions on that? Oh, Royce has the mic. He was going to make a snarky comment, got distracted by someone with a real legitimate question.
I was just wondering, since we are after the cash flow at the end of the saving period, at the time of the withdrawal, those three scenarios that you just ran through, do we compare actual equity that you accumulate through different scenarios? Is there a difference?
Yeah, there's more equity when you do nomads, you're buying them sooner. But we did not take that into account for selling the properties or for doing a cash out refinance or something funky like that. But you actually do have more equity because you buy the properties sooner, so you end up buying them and then starting to pay them down and letting the appreciation happen while you own them instead of waiting for that to happen and then you're buying them later. So yeah, you have a lot more equity when you buy nomad, even with 5% down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, snarky comment.
Actually, the question was right in line with what I was curious, because you're compounding the return on stocks, correct?
Yes.
So you are extremely hindering the money you've put into real estate because you're not putting it to work in any way, right?
No, actually, real estate is better than stocks. You're going to say.
Yes, I'm just saying you're not taking any equity into it.
No equity at all. No equity in this discussion at all. Yep. Equity is off the table for tonight. I will do an entire class on equity, but no more questions on equity because it's not covered.
What's equity?
Yeah, exactly. What's equity? Equity is the difference between what the property is worth and how much you owe on the loan.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
That was fire. Let's see, look at that. I don't even remember. Oh, so are you taking the cash flow when it becomes positive and investing that in the stock market? Is that part of this calculation?
Yeah, it goes into your stock market account and gets deposited there. So yes.
So how do you counter the, like you're showing 8.97%. I mean,
Yes.
we've run a calculator before that shows trying to get a return of 8% across a 30-year period in the stock market. There's almost like 0% chance starting at every point and ending at every point across 30 years in history.
So I actually have real data for index funds. We went to Bogleheads and got their backtesting data, their historical data, and I'm using real numbers. So I'm not sure what calculator you were using before and where they're getting their data from.
It's all the same stock market data.
I don't know.
So something needs to get figured out there.
Yep, I will tell you that I trust the data that I have now because it's pretty serious data. It's like back-tested data for professional traders.
I can somewhat answer that if you want.
Oh, is the mic on?
There's a lot of question about the validity of certain data sets, especially before the Great Depression. More recent data is considered more valid. The further back in time you go, there's more question about how valid it was because of lack of, well, trackability and all that.
This particular calculator lets you set a start date and end date in time and basically looks across the history. So it's
I'm using 1871 through 2017. What I'd like to do at some point is actually do individual time periods where we do actual back-tested data for each one instead of doing the assumption that it's just a flat one. But I told you from the very beginning, this is a overly simplified assumption so that I didn't get off in the weeds teaching you 30 minutes of that tonight. But there's a lot of testing, a lot of Monte Carlo testing to do where you go through all those different starting periods. Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. All right, so it's not intuitive, but sometimes it is better to buy less and sometimes more. So I'll show you an example here. So this is basically sorted in order. On the bottom, it's the longest time to retirement. On the top, it's the shortest time to retirement. This is basically all the different variations of 20% down rentals. This is one 20% down rental. Oh, by the way, all of these, for the 20% down rentals, all of them have one owner occupant at 5% down Nomad. But this is one 20% down rental, 387, 2, 3, 4, and then once you get to 4 though, it's actually better to do 10. Okay? And I think part of it has to do with money in the stock market growing and contributing more to your retirement than the negative cash flow or the positive or the break-even cash flow on properties and saving up that stuff is. So there's some weird stuff going on where it's not actually ideal to do this. However, if you do the 10 rentals, to Brian's point later on, you have a lot more living expense money. Your standard of living is much higher than if you just do the stock market one. So there's some really weird things. So it goes 10, 5 properties, 9, 7, 8, 6, and some of these are really, really close, like 351, 352, 350s. I'd consider all of these almost interchangeable. They're very, very close, okay? And then the 30% save, the Nomad's the best one, and Nomad with gifting is the best of all of them, okay? All right, house hacking with roommates. So if you were saving $17.50 per month, are you cold too? No. Oh, okay. I'm like up here sweating. I'm like, what? Oh, is that what it is? If you were saving $17.50 a month, if you get one roommate for $600 per month, that increases your savings rate by about 34.29% pre-tax. So getting one roommate is like you saving 35% more. Okay? That's like saving almost 40% of your income. Before, basically $1,800 a month was 30%. You add another $600 in saving, that's like going to that 40% savings rate by just getting one roommate. If you do 2 roommates, it's 68.57%. It's like saving almost 50% of your income. And finally, 3 roommates is like saving 102%. It's a 102% increase. It's like saving 60% of your income. So how much of a luxury is living alone?
A lot.
Turns out it's pretty significant. And are you willing to pay that premium? If you're squeamish about roommates or unable to have them, a spouse, you know, so many times I'll get someone to come to me, they'll come to class, they'll be like, hey, James, I love the Nomad model, but my spouse won't go along with it. It's always the spouse, it's never the person who comes. Okay, so if you're squeamish about roommates though, or unable to do it, side hustle. It's the same thing. If you can make $600 a month more from your side hustle, it's like having a roommate. If you can make $1,200, it's like having 2 roommates. If you can make $1,800, it's like having 3 roommates. Brian, how much do you think you can make in a really simple side hustle with Amazon?
Oh, we taught you how to get to $1,000 a month in 6 months.
$1,000 a month. So getting to 2 roommates is probably pretty close.
And if you put a little more time and effort in, you're higher than that.
If you were only able to save 10%, but you had a side hustle that could bring in another 20%, that's like being at these 30% numbers. But you got to do the side hustle. Okay? All right, so what happens if you're getting roommates? Even getting 1 roommate for a single year, it buys you 4 months earlier to fire. So it shows you here, you get 1 roommate for 1 year. Strong. It goes from 289 months if he was going to do it himself, doing Nomad for 11 properties, to 285 if he was going to do it with roommates. 1 roommate for 1 year. Can you suck it up and live with 1 roommate for a year, or side hustle for 12 months for a year? Well, what that is in 1 year. $600 a month side hustle. Okay? What if you could tolerate 2 or 3 roommates or a side hustle? Turns out this is all for 1 year. 1 roommate is 285 months. 2 roommates is 282 months. And there's no difference between 2 and 3. It just is not enough to make a difference in when you get to retirement. For doing roommates between 2 roommates and 3 roommates for 1 year. Okay? But what about roommates for 10 years? What if you're like, I'm committed? I could do a side hustle for a decade, or I can get roommates for a decade. One of those ways, I'm committed to doing it. What impact does that have? Basically, you go from 265 months if you were doing, this is the down payment with gifts. If you were just doing the save your own down payments, it was 289 months. Now it goes to 264 months if you're able to do one roommate, same plan. So you basically gain, what is that, 25 months, 2 years, about 2 years doing that way? And you gain another almost 20 months by doing a second roommate, and you gain another 11 months or so by gaining a third roommate for a decade for doing that. Okay, so now you can retire in 19 years, 7 months if you're willing to do Nomad 11 times and get 3 roommates or do a side hustle for a decade. Okay? Your life expectancy is shorter with roommates? Yeah. Some people would argue it's better. You have social interaction. You have people to kind of connect with. I know people that have really good relationships with their roommates. It's like they're best friends. So, I don't know. It totally. It could go either way. You're right. And maybe it's, maybe it's one roommate and a side hustle, or maybe it's just side hustle. Who knows? But this is the model. All right, embrace roommate side hustle lifestyle. What if you did this for your entire life? You resigned to living with roommates until you fire, or you committed to side hustle until you retired. How much faster can you achieve the word up there? How much faster can you achieve? I knew I shouldn't have broke down and not said the word. Now I'm going to have to go say it, fire. So basically, how much faster can you achieve fire? There you go. How much faster? What do you think? Instead of just doing roommates for 10 years, you do it for until you actually achieve financial independence.
15 years.
15 years?
Until the divorce.
Until the divorce. All right, here we go. So, let me get my bearings. So this is 3 roommates, basically the plan, 11 nomads, 10 rentals, 5% down, saving 30% of your income. You get 3 roommates for 10 years. That's 235 months. That's 19 years, 7 months to retirement. Or if you do it for the whole duration, you end up buying yourself 15 more months. You can retire at 18 years and 4 months. Brian's like, not worth it. I'll work for an extra 15 months instead of having roommates for the entire time.
I'm pretty sure everyone in here would just choose the 264 option and side hustle for the other 44 months.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay. So I talked about that. So basically 18.3 years is what it takes you to do that. Okay, so you have a considerable amount invested in stocks. So when you're buying these properties, once you're done buying them, you're investing that 30% or so in any positive cash flow you have from the rentals back into the stock market. So you end up having account balances that are growing. This is the one where you're saving 30%, but these other ones are variations of Nomad where you're starting to save money. This is the amount of money you have in your bank account, your stock market account, and this is time. So with all these different scenarios, you're starting to accumulate money. Okay? Some more than others, depending on what you're doing in your plan, but you're able to acquire money this way. So what do you do with that extra money? Do you leave it in the stock market, or do you do something more with it? What if you decided to pay off mortgages? Does that seem like a smart idea? Can you get to retirement earlier if you do it that way? Yes. Okay, so does it make sense to pay off houses? How much will that speed up your financial independence retire early date? All right. Paying down loans slows down fire. Okay, so this is the model. Basically 11 nomads, 5% down, 30% saved, 3 roommates forever, or a side hustle for $1,800. You pay down the loans, lowest balance first. That's 228 months. If you actually pay down the highest balance first, it doesn't make any difference. If you don't actually pay down your loans, you end up at retirement 8 months earlier. I don't know. I didn't look at that number. But let me think about this. Does it make sense to me that you have higher net worth with that? No, I don't. Well, you probably do because you're leaving the money in the stock market getting almost 9% instead of paying down the loan at whatever I use, 5%. So probably a higher net worth, yes. Okay, so slows it down. What about paying off loans in full? What if instead of saying every time I have extra money above $10,000, I go and I just make a payment toward my mortgage? What if instead of doing that, you said, I'm going to keep all the money in the stock market. As soon as I have enough to pay off an entire mortgage in full, then I pull it out of the stock market, I pay off the house, I free up the entire cash flow on that, I get rid of the mortgage, and now I have an asset that's producing a lot more income. But I'm letting the money grow at the stock market rate instead of just getting the mortgage rate, which is what you're actually getting when you pay down your mortgage. Okay? So what if you do it that way? Pay off mortgages in full. So instead of dumping everything over 10K, inflation adjusted, into paying off loans as quickly as possible, you keep that money invested in the stock market. Then once you have enough to pay off the house in full, you do that. That's what I just said. You keep money invested at stock market rates of return until you can free up cash flow by paying off a mortgage entirely, instead of just saving the interest rate of the mortgage. It is, oh, this is a really important point. So if you go and you take your money and you leave it in the stock market, is your rate of return guaranteed? Absolutely not. There's a huge market risk. It could go down to half. It could go down 10%. It could go down 20%. So you have a market risk keeping your money in that stock market. Over a long period of time, it tends to perform okay. But in any short period of time, you could have significant market losses there. Okay? So if you're doing that, it's speculative, the return for the stock market. Someone get her a microphone, please. But the return you're getting by paying off your loan, it is a guaranteed return because you're paying off a contract you have for 360 months. So if you have a 5% loan, that's your mortgage interest rate, you are guaranteed to get that 5% if you pay off that loan, because that is the return you're getting by paying it off. What was the question? The microphone is off.
Okay, so say the market crashes, but you could have the same thing with the house. You pay it off and then it crashes and your house isn't worth anything.
So the difference between paying off your mortgage and freeing up the cash flow is you have a mortgage payment. Let's say it's $1,500 a month. If you pay off that mortgage, even if the house value goes to essentially zero, you no longer have a $1,500 a month obligation. And let's say you have cash flow on that property, it's $1,500 better by not having the mortgage.
Okay, and that's assuming you're not going to sell it or try to.
Yeah, in this case, we're not selling. Yep, absolutely. All right, so will that speed things up? So, yeah, Dan's question. You want to pass the mic? It should be on, but the red light should be not on. Awesome.
So, another point on the real estate is that it hedges against the timing, because on the long term, you're giving numbers on stock market and long term, but can you imagine the people that were to retire in the year 2000?
Sure.
That, all their retirement accounts went down 50% or more. So
yeah.
It hedges against the timing.
Totally. Yeah, I think you're right. It does hedge.
On a side note.
But you could also have a real estate market. If you happen to be in Las Vegas, you could have seen a pretty big decline in your real estate values too. So there's risks in both things, but they're different risks.
On a side note, that website is up.
Oh, really?
I just brought it up on my.
Oh, nice. All right, cool. I'll check that out. Thank you. So let's speed that up by how much? How much faster is it to leave your money in the stock market, getting a fixed rate of return, and then use that money when you have a big enough chunk to completely pay off your house? How much does that speed stuff up? 7 years. 7 years faster?
Yeah, I don't think it does.
Doesn't speed it up at all. Slows you down. Let's take a look. So this is the one where you have roommates, but you're not paid off any loans. That's 220 months. If you do it for 10 years, if you have roommates for 10 years, it goes 12 months faster to 208 months. If you have roommates forever and you're paying off your loans, it's 191 months. So basically you can retire in just under 16 years if you save your money in chunks in the stock market and then you pay them off in order to do that.
So you're pulling money out of an 8.97% return to pay off a 5% return, and it's going to go faster?
Yes, because you're freeing up $1,500 a month in income, so your your cash flow actually improves by $1,500, which gets you to your retirement earlier. It's really freaky. It's part of the conversation that you and I have about some other stuff.
Yeah, I bet the lines cross again in the future.
They do.
And that's where it's messed up.
Yeah, that's where it's totally messed up. Is that we're optimizing here for speed. How can I get to retirement earlier? But we're not optimizing for massive net worth or massive cash flow later on. Yeah, totally. All right, any other questions about that? Is that interesting? It's getting down there, right? We're going for 5 years. Can we do it? No. I might be able to do it, but not tonight. Different model. All right, so recasting loans. There's a difference between paying down principal and recasting. So imagine for a minute, you're walking down the street, you find $10,000 sitting on the ground. You pick it up. You say, okay, I got this $10,000. I don't have any other debts. The only debt I have is my debt on my own owner-occupant property. Should I take this $10,000 and make a principal payment toward my loan? Or should I go to the bank and say, Mr. Banker, I got $10,000. Would you be willing to change the terms of my loan such that my monthly payment goes down by, let's say, $50 if I give you $10,000 now? That's called recasting. If you take the $10,000 in and you just pay down principal, what it does is it shortens how much you have left to pay, but it keeps your payment the same. So when you do a normal principal payment, it shortens your time that you have left on your loan and keeps your payment the same. Recasting keeps the duration of the loan the same and lowers your payment slightly. Make sense? So you would think, maybe, recasting a loan, taking $10,000 chunks and going and asking your lender to say, please reduce my payment by about $50, might actually get you to retirement earlier, because now your monthly payments, your mortgage payment went down, your cash flow improved, and you want cash flow to be able to retire. You would think. Let's see. So paying down principal shortens time until loan is paid off. We talked about that. Recasting keeps the length but improves cash flow immediately. If you have 10K chunks, and by the way, some lenders will do this, some lenders will not, but if you go to them, usually they require a big enough chunk. You can't go in there with $17 and say, would you please recast my loan? They're going to say no. Okay? But if you go in there with a reasonable amount, 10K is usually what I hear, a lot of cases they'll do it. Now, the other challenge is some lenders will only do this once or maybe twice if you push. It's going to be really hard to do what I've actually modeled here, which is every time you have 10K, recast. Okay? So you keep money invested in the stock market rates of return until you can free up enough cash flow by recasting the loan with a 10K chunk. In reality, it might be hard to do this. I just talked you that. So will it speed it up, and by how much? Let's see. So here's recasting. 226 months if you have 3 roommates forever. You start with the highest balance. It is not better than actually paying off your loans in full. So recasting is not better than leaving your money until you have a big enough chunk to pay off the whole thing. So it's 226 months if you recast, 191 if you actually wait until you have a big enough chunk to pay it all off completely. So wait to pay it off completely. Okay? Any questions on that? Sweet, I might finish on time. More nomad, less nomad. Which is better? Is it better to buy 1, 2, 3, 4 nomads or 9, 10, 11, 12 nomads? It depends really, right? It depends on what you're trying to do. If you want more money at the end of your retirement, it's probably better to have more properties that are producing cash flow. If you want to hit retirement earlier, it may make sense to do fewer so that you don't take on additional negative cash flow, which might actually slow down your ability to fire earlier. Glad he's out of the room. All right, so which is better? Depends on what your goal is. If you want to retire early, it might be less nomad. If you want a higher standard of living in retirement, it might be more nomad. So here it is. Basically, I can get it down to 173 if we only do 6 nomads, 5% down, 30% saved monthly. You have 3 roommates forever or a side hustle for $1,800 a month. You pay off your mortgages in full when you save up enough money. I can get it down to basically 173 months, which is 14 years and 5 months. If you just did 11 nomads, it's 15 years, 11 months. So it's about, I don't know, whatever that is. Year and a half. Yeah, a year and a half or so more. If you do more nomad properties. So you can see though how they all work out. Is that interesting to you? But you understand why now, right? Is that you buy certain properties, you might not take on more cash flow, more negative cash flow, and so it gets you there faster, but then by the time you get to retirement, you may not be making nearly as much. What did I do here? 6 nomads. All right, so I summarized, I think, all the different strategies up to this point, I think is what I did. So this is saving 30%. This one is 11 nomads, 5% down, 30% saved. No roommates, no paying off stuff. That's 289 months. This one is getting gift money. That's 265 months. This one is buying 10, 20% down rental properties after you do your 1 nomad. That's the slowest of all of them. Then we do roommates here. Roommates forever is 220 months. Then we do roommates forever, pay down loans, lowest balance first. That's 228 months. Then I do this one, which is only pay off mortgages in full. That's 191 months. And the winner so far is 6 nomads, not 11, 5% down, 30% save monthly, 3 roommates or a side hustle forever, only pay off mortgages in full, lowest balance first. And that is 173 months, 14 years, 5 months. And if my math is right, JC can retire at 36. Okay?
James, what's that bottom scenario again?
This one right here?
Yeah.
This one is you do a Nomad. Then after that, you save one Nomad. Then you save up 20% down payments, and you buy 10, 20% down payments over time. So you're buying 10 more rentals.
Okay.
Each one you save 20% down payment for.
So you're not nomading then?
Nope, not Nomad. You don't have to move in for this one at all. Okay? So here's actually the discussion we've been having all night. I saved it for the end. I thought it was going to be a surprise. Turns out it's not. This is basically the speed issue, right? Is that with this model, with the 6 Nomads, you get to retirement earlier. This is earlier on that goal chart where you get to 100%. But the one where you have 11 Nomads, it comes like a little bit later. But this is a zoomed in view where we're only seeing the first, whatever this is, 200 months of the actual goal. What happens if we take a larger view and we look at past retirement? You can see that the lines cross. And eventually you make a lot more money by buying 11 Nomad properties. How much more? Basically, instead of earning $8,000 per month, and I think this is at month, I don't know, 200 or something, or 300 maybe. But basically right around here, instead of earning $8,000 a month, you're now earning $1,200 per month. 12,000. Okay? So you earn 50% more on your money. Okay? And I adjusted for inflation. So this is like 8,000 in today's dollars versus 12,000 in today's dollars on somebody who only needed to get about 4,000 in order to be able to hit his retirement number. So you can see it actually, this is like hitting your minimum retirement number, and then over time you actually end up with more. Okay? Any questions on that? That was like my big surprise. Surprise. All right, some final remarks. I'm going to be early. This is crazy. As Brian pointed out, and as I've said, there are other different strategies to test. You could take equity from properties, sell off half, pay them off, which is a common strategy. You can decide to do cash out refinances, take some of the money, borrow it at 4% or 5%, take that and invest in the stock market. There's a whole bunch of modeling to do where we take into account sequence of return risk, where you basically say, hey, what happens if we see a huge drop or we see market corrections, or what's the chance of certain things happening? You know, there's models where you do bigger side hustles and you kind of do that for a certain period of time and preload some things. Or what happens if you start with $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 or $1 million today to kind of get there? So there's lots of variations. Different assumptions will yield different conclusions. This is very specific to JC's model, which you can say for a lot of folks, if you're 30 and you're retiring, you're starting from scratch, this might be really similar. Okay? But for some of you who already have some money or some rentals or another house or whatever it is, it may be very different. And you can model that. If you have some money, assets start could dramatically impact your financial independence retire early date. Some strategies might get you to financial independence retire early faster. But ultimately, you have a lower standard of living while in retirement. We talked about that a lot. You may want to consider growth of assets, income, post your retirement. Right? You don't want to necessarily do everything to optimize the date and forego what the big number is your standard of living later on is, because that has a big impact. Homeowners can reduce their total monthly income required once their mortgage is paid off. So we've been assuming that, you know, JC needed $4,000 or whatever it is per month, but once his mortgage is paid off, he may not even need that, or it really increases his standard of living. One strategy I didn't cover, and I'm going to do a whole new book on this, is a 5-year plan to do financial independence and retire early. It's a very, very aggressive plan, and it would require that the market cooperate, okay? Which it might. I mean, the way I have it laid out, there's a really good probability that it will, but if the market goes against you, it's not going to be 5 years. But if you do it, you could take the chance, and the fallback position is not bad. So it's not like it's like you fail and you lose everything. It's like, it just means that you're going to be delayed in your retirement, okay? So I'll probably will do a whole book on that. And I need to do some coding to do that. Any questions? I'm actually done early. Oh, wait. Oh, Brian's question.
How much time do you have?
I have 15 minutes.
Awesome. So how are you accounting for all of the nursing home care that you and I are going to need?
In JC's retirement?
Yeah, in our retirement. In his
yeah,
retirement.
I mean, so to argue,
I mean, that stuff's expensive, right?
It's $7,000 a month in today's dollars per person is what I heard the average is for nursing home care.
Sure, or up to 10 or 12 for
Yeah, depending on how nice
memory
you
or
want it.
whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're doing that, you can go look at your numbers and see where that is. But if you're going into a nursing home, you probably can shorten your life expectancy down. You're not going to be there for 30 years, probably.
Because you have so many roommates, is that why?
Probably. Actually, you could go buy the nursing home. We could rent out 14 rooms and live there for free.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, obviously, there's an insurance component there, right? You can buy.
You could buy it,
insurance and-
but it's hard to do that on $2,000 a month where you're living on that post-tax, right? It's hard to pay for that insurance.
Maybe.
You could do reverse mortgages. You could tap into equity at that point if you have properties. There's lots of things you could do, and we can model what that looks like. Honestly, in the calculator, you can say we have a random event that is a health thing. All of a sudden, your expenses increase by $10,000 a month.
Yeah. So my point is broader than
Yeah.
that, right? The point's broader, right? I don't need you to solve
Yeah.
it, or it's just more. If you look at this and you went and ran this and you were like, oh, it says JC can retire when he's 40, but he didn't take into account any of the other planning for life events that could happen.
Totally.
Maybe wait till you're 43 and then have some reserve stuff.
Yeah, and depending on the plan, it gets a lot better the longer you do it anyway. So some of these plans, it's not like you're just sort of coasting and squeaking by, and then you're going to stay at that level for the rest of it. In most cases, you're able to exceed it and then actually have it increase, especially with rentals.
Yeah, and this is what financial planner data will show. If you guys have ever been to a financial planner, right? It's like, how much do you want to save per month or spend per month in your retirement? When do you want to retire? How long are you going to live? And there's a point where your graph looks like this and comes back down and you basically end up with no money. But then there's a point where the graph just hockey sticks and never comes down.
Yeah.
And that's if you're thinking about retirement, you should probably try to plan for that instead. And you don't want your
Not the hockey stick.
You want the hockey stick.
No, you shouldn't plan. You shouldn't like expect the hockey stick.
No, you should try and have a hockey stick so that you never have a chance of
I agree
running
with
out
that
of money.
part of it, but you want to make sure that you don't have the go into zero part at any reasonable period of time.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, don't make your hockey stick just barely get over the hump. Get it over the hump always.
I think that's true. Uh-oh.
No, it's just I think there's obviously everyone needs to take into account their own situation here, because it's like one of the things like having a family, right? Kids are incredibly expensive from what it looks like.
Yeah, Barb's up here saying, "How does he know?"
I don't know, but I'll tell you, I did my own budget, and then I looked at it, I'm like, I assume a kid's going to be like twice as expensive as this, and oh my God.
Maybe I want to be your child if it's going to be twice as expensive as that.
No.
Making me Qdoba every day.
I think it'd be like less than that.
They need 90,000.
Excuse me.
So I got three, try to make it more applicable to me, but also interesting stuff I've thought about for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
You only get 2 questions tonight, though.
2?
We're going to cut you off. You can do all 3, Blake.
All right. Well, I'll do, maybe something I can do is put some of my reserves into the stock market. So do you do any sort of calculations on like how much reserves is in the bank earning nothing? How much is stock market reserves?
Yeah, this is really complicated, and it's a risk tolerance thing too. And the other thing is that really the end of your money? Like if you lost everything in the stock market, does that mean you're really dangerously close to having no money in reserves elsewhere too? So there's a lot of factors that go into that, and there's different ways to model it and different ways to stress test it. So it's not a simple question. And actually, Brian and I strongly disagree on some of these numbers for how much money you should have per property. It's an ongoing discussion we have, and he's probably right, but I'll tell you what my number is. And that is 6 full months, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, HOA, everything per property saved somewhere, relatively secure. And if I had a lot more than 6, I'd probably be okay with the stock market. If it was just the 6, I probably would not do stock market.
All right.
You can model that in the software, though, just for clarification. Yeah, and for clarity, you just called the stock market not relatively secure.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It is a high risk thing. You could have 50% down months or years, whatever it is. So I mean, I totally get that. But over a long period of time, if you're going to do this for 30, 40 years, I don't think that it's going to do that. But who knows? I mean, the stock market could go to 0 for all I know. So could real estate.
Well, typical market corrections are only.
When you get the mic, get on mic if you can. Blake's got a question, so we'll do this. We'll do the corrections later.
I think it's important to, along that same topic to realize that the longest stock market correction in history was 2010. or the 2008 crash, and it only took 5 years to get back to 100%. Before that, it was less than a year to correct back to the 100% mark at every fall. So as long as your window, okay. Apparently I'm not right.
There's a whole class on stock market data that I probably need to teach. I'll teach some of it next week because the $1 million question is going to deal with some Monte Carlo. So I'll deal with some of that next week, but I'm not going to go teach a whole class on stock market returns. Go ahead, Blake.
Just like inflation projections.
Yep.
Do you put credit to like the John Williamson type stuff that projects like really high real inflation rates, and that the government's, you know, dumbing down inflation with substitution and playing with the numbers or whatever? Because then that makes debt, fixed rate debt, look a lot better.
It does. Yeah. It does make it look a lot better. I don't know who the guy you named is, but I will tell you, we can model inflation because inflation is a variable. And so I plug it in as a relatively static number, but it also can be, just like the stock market rates of return, we can have them be some Monte Carlo distribution, normal distribution curve, and do that. We can model that too. And so we can go look at historical inflation rate data and make it such that it does a normal distribution curve based on that, or do extremes. We could basically have it be really extreme market data, inflation rate data, and do some stuff and see how that impacts things. But you got to do Monte Carlo simulations for that. You can't just do a single run, because a single run is going to be almost meaningless, because you just made a static assumption about what inflation is. And I mean, 3% is just a stab in the dark too, but it's based on some historical reference material. I think we said it earlier in the presentation, it was 2.7 for the average and 3 point something for median, or vice versa, was what we saw for inflation going back, I think, like 60 years or 50 years or something. 3.5? 325. Yeah.
I just have a quick question.
Yep.
I mean, amazing data, great models, very impressive graphs. The question that I have from the consumer perspective, what is the biggest challenge for people to actually implement this today?
Probably discipline.
Looking at this crowd.
Probably discipline is the biggest challenge for any investment strategy. Is,
Sticking with
people, this 40-something people or whatever it is that came to the class, and they're all pumped up and stuff like that, but a very small percentage of them are even going to buy the first property. And then even of the people that like are on the model, they're buying investment properties to buy property 4, 5, and 6 is really, really low probability. So you have this like, the people that take action are in low quantity to begin with. Then the people that take consistent action, stick out with the plan, it's really hard to do. So it's discipline. It's pretty easily, I think, the.
It's discipline in the face of adversity too.
Totally. When the market's down, or when the stock market's down and you get discouraged, it's really, really hard to stick with the plan. Much, much harder. When the market's going up, this is the time when everyone's excited about real estate, when the market's going up. But this is like, this is the time when it's easiest. It's not easy when you see 2008 or 2007, or 2009 or whatever it is. It's hard, and it's challenging. It's hard to stay the course and to do that. But those are buying opportunities, especially if you're kind of like dollar cost or dollar value averaging, buying properties like a nomad model. Because one of the things we're going to see when I do the $1 million, you inherit $1 million, you acquire $1 million, and you're doing assets. One of the big risks is you buy 10 properties on month 1. And you see a huge market correction. That's ugly. And so what do? Do you actually stagger your purchases? And what does that look like? And where do you put the money in the meantime? So there's some pretty complicated things to think about, which we'll cover a little bit in next week's class. I'm not sure, like I said, it's like an 8-hour thing I could teach on, but I'm not sure I'll get to all of it. But it's kind of crazy. Yeah. So I don't know where I was in your question, but that's what my thoughts. Yeah. You want to give the mic to?
I was just curious. I don't know if this is a strange question or not, but have you ever done any studies on, let's say somebody has fairly decent cash flow, like cash on hand, right? And market crashes, then they buy.
Yep.
Versus doing this model when housing prices are much higher than.
Totally.
So have you done any studies of,
Yeah, I'll say.
I know it's like Vegas, right? You don't know when it's ever going to happen.
That's the challenge, is that you can't time the market. But yeah, if you buy when the market is at its lowest, it looks amazing because it just goes up from there, right? The challenge is, even if you wait for a market correction, we've had this huge run up, and the market may correct. Maybe it gives back 10%, maybe it gives back 20%. But really, if you had sort of bought now, or bought. You're not really making up that much ground by waiting for the dip, in other words.
properties, right? 2, 3 properties versus just one during that period, not.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't really matter. No, I don't think so.
If you buy a property today and it's 300,000 and you wait 3 years and it just goes up 10% a year, right? And you're at 330 in 3 years, and then it goes down 10%, it's still just down to 320.
If it's going up 10% a year, that's 390. But 390, and then it dips 10 or 15 or 20%. You were still better off buying today than you were then. And the other really weird kind of curveball to this whole ordeal is interest rates. Is that you lock in interest rates now while you can, because we don't know where they're going to go. If they go up, then you're locked in right now. If they go down, then you actually can refinance and lower it. So it's like a ratcheting risk where you don't take on any more risk by locking today, but you have a chance of having it go better because you wait 3 or 4 or 5 years. If the interest rates go back down, you say, sweet, I accept. Here's $2,000. I'm going to refinance. Now it's at 4.125. And you can do stuff like that.
If you were waiting for like a Vegas downturn of 50%, I mean, you might have to wait. How long do you wait before you decide I've waited too long? What if you wait 10 years? Now you're 10 years of just waiting.
Yeah, and it's really, I will tell you, having lived through the worst market crash of our generation, it is really hard to act during the downturn because you don't have the confidence. You don't know if it's going to zero. You get really scared. You're like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't think it could have gone down 10, 15, 20% in other markets, not here, but I didn't think it could go down that far. Maybe it is going down to 50%. Maybe it's going down to 20%. And I don't want to go and put all of my cash, because cash is king at this point, into those deals at that point because you don't know. And so it's better when you're acquiring to acquire over time at regular intervals. If you do like one every 6 months or one every 3 months or one every year, like you're doing Nomad, that is a much better strategy because you take into account already market corrections. So same with stock market. Yep. And that's the problem with the $1 million. You got to come into $1 million. If you go stick that in the stock market today and tomorrow you have a 20% correction, it's like you started with 800. And that's the problem. If you had just done 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 forever, yeah, you have market dips, but you're only putting in another small percentage of your overall asset base when you do that.
Yeah, James, I just got a question. If you know about the VA loan, like how fast or expedites the process?
Sure.
Or if it does at all?
Yeah, so basically it's gifting the down payment because you're starting with 0. And you can only do, well, you might be able to do 2, but around here, the chance of you doing more than 1 and using your benefit is really unlikely because you're going to use up most of your VA benefit when you buy one house. And so if you do that, it's basically like you starting and being able to buy the house first. So it's like the gift one where you're able to do that. So it speeds up a little bit, but it's not significant. Yeah, it's a couple months. Yeah, you're welcome. And VA loan is a good way to do Nomad to start with. And if you can find duplex, triplex, or fourplex, great, but don't wait. Don't hold out for a duplex, triplex, or fourplex. If you find the right single family home, do that. Because it's better for you to acquire the property earlier, as we showed, than it is for you to wait, even if it's a slightly better deal. Question?
Amen to VA loans.
Long-term too, because if you got 4 doors, that's like a lot of equity and income you're having coming in versus, does that still beat your model?
Yes.
Getting a residential first?
Yep. Speed is more important than size. Yep.
But even for long-term wealth?
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's not worth waiting. Yeah. And you could always do a FHA loan for the next one. Yeah, question.
I actually wanted to address what she said about dollar cost averaging into the stock market versus lump sum investing.
Yep.
Every study ever done over the past 100 years shows that lump sum investing into the stock market produces better returns over the long haul than dollar cost averaging in when you have a lump sum amount. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. If you have the $1 million, not dropping it all in at once is worse than, no, not dropping it all in at once is better than doling it out in increments.
Correct.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If you have it all.
Yeah, it depends on your time horizon, I'm sure, right? If you're only going to hold on to that for 3 months, you have that risk.
This is very similar to playing.
Oh, microphone.
Oh, we're going to talk about poker. No, we're talking about
Blackjack.
Oh.
This is very similar to playing one-handed blackjack.
Yeah.
Right? If you have $100 and you want to win money, you have a higher percentage odds of just walking up to the table and playing it all in one hand than you do sitting down and playing for a long period of time. That is true. The more fun you have.
Any other questions? So I want some feedback. Was this the class you guys thought you were coming here for, or was this a very different class than what you thought you were coming here for? It was the expected class? Because sometimes I have a tendency to name a class one thing, and then people come and it's like, what was this? I mean, it was good, but what was James teaching there? It wasn't anything to do with the
What
title.
was this class called?
Yeah. Intro to Financial Independence and Retiring Early.
What does that spell?
Yeah, exactly. You had a question behind you.
I think the mic's all low. We got that.
So, like, leaving leverage out of the equation is what, to me, it'd be like talking about the stock market and not having it be a compounding investment or something. Like leaving leverage out of the real estate equity, or the fact that, you know, you can buy a property that, say, goes up 3% a year if you want to guess that it's going to go up 3% a year, but you maybe only put 5% down. And some like the games, like you said, you could play with selling half and that type of thing.
Yeah, we didn't cover those strategies tonight. And it partially was time, and partially was, you know, the model is to acquire a certain number of rentals. And if you're going to sell off the other ones, it may buy you some speed, but it cuts your investments in half too. And to change your standard of living. So it's a complicated problem, and one we could totally model. It's just I actually thought I was going to be over with what I had, and Brian was like, "You have 70 slides. You need to cut down to like three, you know, half of that or a third of that." So.
Well, for me, it was interesting, but not really helpful because I intend to retire within a couple of years. I don't have 20 years to wait.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think some of the concepts of like the safe withdrawal rate is probably going to be applicable to you, and you know, the rental properties and how they kind of count cash flow and doing that is probably applicable. So I mean, it's not a perfect fit for everybody, and it never can be. I mean, half the classes I teach, Brian doesn't need. So.
You touched on this, but one of the things reading the blog that you mentioned that really hit really hard for me was the sensitivity of your portfolio relative to the safe withdrawal rate. So you said 3.25%, and so any variance you have in spending actually has a huge impact on whether you have financial preservation or financial depletion. And I thought that was one of the huge takeaways I took from reading those articles. I don't know if you really emphasize that as much as it could be, but 3.25% is not very much.
You think that it's too low?
No, I think that number is right, but your variance between 3.25 to 4% is very small.
You mean like the long-term effects of your portfolio value if you go up to 4 versus at 3.25? Yeah, if you're taking out 4%, it could be significantly detrimental to you in retirement versus that 3.25. Yeah, 3.25 is a pretty good number to use. So, yeah.
You know, one great thing about the presentation here, even if you're planning like 1-2 years, which, you know, so am I here, is legacy. You didn't bring this up, but, you know, a next slide that will probably come in the next presentation is, okay, here's your net worth after doing this, and that.
Sure.
And you can think, well, I'm not going to be using that net worth, but, you know, your legacy, your kids.
Totally.
And then, you know, can they just live off of it?
Yeah, and then basically start it, instead of doing a 600 month or whatever we did time frame, you could do a 1200 month model where you're taking into account your kids' stuff. So you sell off everything, you sell off some, and you switch it over to your kids at some point. Yeah, that's interesting.
Will paying down extra money towards your mortgage get you closer to FIRE?
No, we showed that. It slows it down. Yep, if you just do extra principal payments, it actually slows down FIRE. Yeah. That's very funny. Jason has a question.
I just wanted to say this is relevant to, I could geek out with this about this all day, but relevant to what you were saying. In the original Trinity study, one of the other findings that you never hear talked about, but they say that if you had retired at the worst period in time for sequence of return risk, which would have been 1968, that a 3% withdrawal rate would still survive a 50-year period. So if you go down, if you're able to live off 3% of your portfolio at a whack, adjusted for CPI, then effectively you could live off of it forever. That was one of the other findings.
There's another question over here.
Just kind of expand on that last comment about slowing down FIRE and thinking about her situation. So let's say you have your timeline's 10 years, not 30.
Sure.
Paying
Do you have
down-
any
in that
assets?
scenario, paying down principal, is there any advantage? Or
Well, we could run the model to find out for sure, right? But the other thing is, if you only have 10 years, do you have assets you're starting with? Because that may significantly impact even how we decide to structure it and what we decide to do. You may re-leverage. If you have 10 years going out, you may decide, hey, let's go do 80% out, cash out refis, take extra money and buy additional properties because you're trying to speed things up and you have things that my son doesn't have. We're assuming he starts with $0. We're assuming he's able to save 30%. But if you're 10 years out from FIRE because you've got some established assets and stuff, very different model for you. And that may change everything.
unless you take his scenario and you pass it on to the kids and so forth.
But even then, you may decide to do something differently, right? You may decide, I'm going to continue to acquire every year 20% down or as fast as I can because I want to build up a huge portfolio of assets. If you're not trying to like squeak by and minimize your fire date, you could actually do different things. You might make different decisions about how you do your investments. So yeah, it comes in, there's a lot of factors. Yeah. Here's a question over here. Thank you.
This is just my opinion with
Is that on?
with numbers running too, but when you're willing to increase savings rate,
yes,
of like 50, 70% of people are willing to do that towards debt pay down, at least towards 2 homes, for example. Just in running it with calculations, we could pay off 2 homes within 6 years, 11 months. Now, with that being said, that's, in my mind, too close to comfort for us for Lean 5, but technically that would hit it. So
you mean you'd be able to hit your fire number by paying off your loans and just having the 2 houses free and clear?
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. But if you're doing, if you do the very early slide where I showed you the different percentages and how long it takes you to get to retirement, that slide shows you if you're willing to go to like 70%, it shouldn't take you that long anyway. It was like right around here. Yeah, if you're doing 70%, 7 years, 10 months, no matter what. Right. That's like even stock market. Right. So, yeah. Yeah, if you get really aggressive in your savings rate, sure. Crank up your income, which is what the side hustle does, right? It moves you from, hey, I'm only saving 10%, now I'm side hustling, I'm at 30%. Or I'm at 30% and I'm now at 50% or whatever it is. You can really bump up how quickly you can get there just by doing the side hustle, which is why I think a lot of people came to the side hustle class. Yeah. All right, any final questions? Thank you all for coming. I do appreciate it. I will see you all next week.